of August. I'm Stephen Ridgway. Bitforge cryptocurrency wallet flaws have been identified, which allows the attacker to effectively to steal the keys from the wallets and almost silently empty the wallets in a very short period of time. So, a couple of key flaws here. One being CVE 2023 33241, which is a vulnerability in the GG18 and GG20 signature schemes. And the other one that is of note is CVE 2023 33242, which affects the Lindell 17 2PC protocol in a similar way. They are fundamentally um, uh, flaws based around a checking of effectively a lack of checking on the some of the parameters presented by the attacker, um, and it allows for the extraction of keys in 16-bit chunks, which means effectively for GG18, GG20, that means you could retrieve the entire private key in about 16 repetitions of the attack. That actually then allows you to, from if you have initiated the attack from the client side, you can then use that information to attack the server. That would need 256 requests. However, the requests are generally not limited in any particular way. So, fairly serious. This has been fixed by some of the providers of wallets. So, Coinbase, for example, has fixed the flaws in their wallet as a service solution. However, if you have got a crypto wallet, it is worth checking that you have maintained it up to date. Because the protocols are the vulnerabilities are in the protocols, not in a particular implementation of the protocols. And so those are, these protocols are common in Coinbase, Zengo, Binance, and all sorts of other places. So have a look. If you've got cryptocurrency wallets, have a look. Make sure that you've applied any patches or updates that are available, and check if you're using a wallet as a service solution, that solution has dealt with this particular issue, because these are quite serious. Historically, ngrok has been used as a tunnel, effectively, to allow compromised devices to communicate with C2 servers in one way or another. These are if you've installed malware and you need it to connect to a C2 server, the connection has to be initiated outbound, unless you're very lucky and you manage to compromise something which is presented on the internet. But often the devices that are compromised live inside an organization in one way or another, either sort of physically inside or virtually inside a cloud environment, that sort of thing. Well, ngrok provides the ability for malware to reach out and effectively create a tunnel. And of course, obviously, this being an outbound connection will simply, pick up natting from whatever the firewall is that it goes through, or whatever the presentation to the internet for that environment is. Therefore, there's no need for complicated network reconfiguration. It just reaches out. Similar to if you're just, if you're on your browser browsing the internet, your connection just reaches out to those servers. Well, it's a similar sort of thing. And once the connection is in place, of course, it can be held open, and you can have two-way communication through those sorts of channels. Well, ngrok has been one that has been traditionally used by attackers, but it has in the past been commonly used by attackers for this uh, particular uh, purpose. However, Cloudflare Tunnel is now becoming um, increasingly used in place of ngrok. So Cloudflare Tunnel, if you're not aware, it allows you to present services on the internet via Cloudflare without having to configure your internal infrastructure to present those services out. So similar kind of concept. The client reaches out to Cloudflare. Cloudflare opens up the connectivity from there. The sort of stuff, by the way, which this is being used for is SSH, RDP, SMB, that sort of stuff from an attacker's perspective. So. Those protocols that allow you to do stuff like get access, control things, extract stuff. Now, something to bear in mind is that Cloudflare, in fact, ngrok as well, but both Cloudflare and ngrok are legitimate tools that have legitimate purposes. And consequently are harder to identify as being used maliciously unless you've got some good understanding of outbound good controls and good visibility on your outbound connections. Also, bear in mind that Cloudflare, the Cloudflare daemon, Cloudflared, um, uses HTTPS, but also uses QUIC on ports 7844. QUIC being, for those who haven't come across it, an alternative to TCP. It's a UDP-based alternative to TCP that supports HTTP2 multiplexing. So, i.e., it eliminates the inherent slowness in TCP. That's a story for another day, but TCP was designed to cope with packet loss at effectively quite a low level in the stack. It isn't always. Modern networks now don't lose packets on anything like the frequency that they used to. So you may not need to be actually checking that all packets sent have been received at that level. You can let your application layer do it if you wanted to. So QUIC uses UDP in preference, instead of TCP. So because of this, okay, if you were looking to understand and potentially mitigate against this sort of C2 communication. First of all, it's worth noting that RDP and SMB, if you don't need them, turn them off, because that on your servers means that even if the daemon is running, there's much less for the C2 server to connect to. I said that very badly, but you know what I mean. Also, definitely worthwhile monitoring outbound connections. So if you're not expecting to be using the QUIC protocol within your environment, you should perhaps be monitoring for attempted connections, outbound connections on ports 7844. Also worth making sure that you are ingesting and checking DNS queries, ingest them into your SIEM or your visibility tooling, and check them. There's a lot of interesting stuff in DNS. And it can be an early warning that malware is there and is looking to reach out. So, again, recommendations from me would be make sure that you are as strict about your outbound controls as you are about any inbound controls. Definitely don't leave ports open that you don't need in any direction, and even though difficult in some environments, put some effort into trying to get some DNS logs into your security visibility tooling, and then compare those against the usual sort of stuff, domains that have been created very recently, domains which have got particular long strings of letters or numbers or whatever don't make sense, things that are known bad. There's a lot of stuff you can do with that. So facial recognition technology uh, has been a particular concern of mine for a while. Interesting. Does allow, though, for mass surveillance, and I'm sure if you listen to this particular briefing over the last few weeks, months, whatever, it will come as no surprise that I am nervous about government overreach or authority overreach in collecting information about people that are doing absolutely nothing wrong. However, facial recognition can actually get it wrong rather than just create a vast database of where you've been and who you've been with. It can actually result in the wrong people being arrested. So a good example of this is the Detroit police, who recently arrested an 8-month pregnant woman for a carjacking um, crime. Uh, but despite facial recognition identifying her as being the person who was seen on CCTV, the person on the CCTV actually doing the carjacking wasn't pregnant. So, was not visibly pregnant. So you would have thought that the law enforcement agencies would have gone, hang on, something doesn't quite add up here. But they didn't. So they did arrest her, and she spent time in custody whilst they investigated this before, obviously, they basically had to let her go. Turns out that the photograph that was used by the facial recognition software was from 2015, despite the fact that they had available to them an up-to-date passport, not passport, I think driving license from 2021 or 2022 or something like that, 2021. They didn't actually cross-check it. So it is not the first occasion where people have been wrongly identified and arrested based on facial recognition technology. So, as ordinary users of, well, in fact, as ordinary people going about our daily lives in normal ways, there's not a lot we can actually do about this stuff. You could wear hoodies, I suppose, and baseball caps or masks or whatever it would be to avoid. But it's just not likely to. It's not feasible to do these sorts of things. But it might be worth, if you are aware of this sort of stuff and you care, it is the sort of thing that I am certain that most politicians don't properly understand. And so it may be worth raising things in the right way if you're that way inclined. A strongly worded letter to your MP about these things. I mean, and this isn't just like an odd event. There are 6 events recently reported in New York. There have been examples. Well, in fact, there's been research that shows that facial recognition software works particularly badly when trying to identify women and people with darker skin. So that there may be all sorts of reasons why that's the case. Mainly, I suspect, just badly coded, badly trained software. But this is a really good example of something that shouldn't be being used without cross checks and checks and balances by law enforcement agencies, in my opinion. And then finally, from me today, it appears that you don't need to compromise organisations in order to exfiltrate PII data. You can simply ask them for it. So, a data leak from the Northern Ireland Police Service of Northern Ireland, um, published published data about 10,000 serving police officers on a website in response to a Freedom of Information request. The sort of information that was published were some names, ranks, departments, locations of serving officers, even identified officers that were working with the other security agencies, MI5 and so on. Oh dear. Yeah, total. This is a cock up. One doesn't, have to ask the question. The person who responded to the Freedom of Information request, did they not think that it was perhaps a bit dodgy that they were looking to publish this stuff, or maybe they didn't even notice? Maybe they just made stuff available without checking what that stuff was, which is fairly awful. But yeah, not good. It was taken down relatively quickly, but that isn't the point. The point is, if you are working in law enforcement, you should not be concerned that details about who you are, and where you are, get leaked. This stuff is potentially useful to criminals or politically active groups or whatever it may be. Absolute blowing shambles, and I sincerely hope that they're going to sort themselves out and come back explaining how this will never happen again. Anyway, that's enough from me for today, and I hope you have a great day, and I'll speak to you